Have you ever been working somewhere when someone unexpectedly turns off the lights? Suddenly, you're in the dark, and your immediate reaction is to let out a yell. This usually turns the lights back on, along with an apology from the person who absentmindedly flipped the switch. In a case like this, there's usually no harm done. But what if you find yourself in an environment that requires immediate adjustment, and your lack of situational awareness prevents a quick response? How many injuries occur because people are just not thinking, or just got in a hurry? Without even realizing it, our distracted work practices puts us at risk for injury every day. Now, imagine you were servicing a machine, and someone flipped a switch that activated gears turning. It's easy to assume that machines are safe once they have been shut down. But that assumption often leads to significant losses. Loss of pay, loss of body parts, loss of your favorite hobbies, or tragically, even the loss of a loved one. This type of lockout-tagout accident happens all too often. Each time, it points to the fact that shutting off machinery just isn't enough. Lockout-tagout is required in general industry employment, where servicing and maintenance of machines and equipment could cause injury to employees due to unexpected startup or release of stored energy. These situations could occur when repairing electrical circuits, cleaning or oiling machinery with moving parts, or jam mechanisms. Lockout is not necessary during normal production operations, provided no guards are removed and employees are not placing any part of their body in a danger zone. Normal production operations are defined as the machine performing its intended function. The purpose of the standard, as with all OSHA standards, is to promote the safety of the employee in the workplace. If a risk exists to any person upon unexpected startup or sudden release of stored energy, all protective measures must be taken to isolate all sources of hazardous energy. Employees can be seriously or fatally injured if machinery they've serviced or maintained unexpectedly energizes, starts up, or releases stored energy. Preventing the unexpected release of potentially harmful energy during maintenance and service work is a cooperative effort. The Lockout-Tagout standard establishes the employer's responsibilities to protect employees from hazardous energy sources on machines and equipment during service and maintenance. Employers must establish an energy control program to ensure that employees isolate machines from their energy sources and render them inoperative before any employee services or maintains them. As a part of an energy control program, employers must establish energy control procedures for removing the energy supply from machines and for putting appropriate lockout or tagout devices on the energy-isolated devices to prevent unexpected startup. Train employees on the energy control program, including the safe application, use, and removal of the energy controls, and inspect these procedures periodically, at least annually, to ensure that they are being followed and that they remain effective in preventing employee exposure to hazardous energies. Energy control procedures must provide employees with the following information: a statement of how to use the procedures, specific procedural steps to shut down, isolate, block, and secure machines, specific steps designating the safe placement, removal, and transfer of lockout-tagout devices, identifying who has the responsibility for those lockout-tagout devices, and specific requirements for testing machines to determine and verify the effectiveness of lockout devices, tagout devices, and any other control measures. An employer should not have the same lockout-tagout procedure for all machines. Training must ensure that employees understand the purpose, function, and restriction of the energy control program. Employers must provide training specific to the needs of authorized, affected, and other employees. Authorized employees are those responsible for implementing the energy control procedures or performing the service or maintenance activities. They need to know the knowledge and skills necessary for the safe application, use, or removal of energy-isolated devices. They also need training in the following: hazardous energy source recognition, the type and magnitude of the hazardous energy sources in the workplace, and energy control procedures, including the methods and means to isolate and control those energy sources. Affected employees, usually machine operators or users, are employees who operate the relevant machinery, or whose jobs require them to be in the area where service or maintenance is performed. These employees do not service or maintain machinery, or perform the lockout-tagout activities. Affected employees must receive training in the purpose and use of energy-controlled procedures. They also need to be able to do the following: recognize when the energy control procedure is being used, understand the purpose of the procedure, and understand the importance of not tampering with the lockout or tagout devices and not starting or using equipment that has been locked or tagged out. All other employees whose work operations are or may be in the area where energy-controlled procedures are used must receive training regarding the energy-controlled procedure and the prohibition against removing a lockout or tagout device and attempting to restart, re-energize, or operate the machinery. In addition, if tagout devices are used, all employees must receive training regarding the limitations of tags. The employer must provide initial training before starting services and maintenance activities, and must provide retraining as necessary. In addition, the employer must certify that the training has been given to all employees covered by the standard. Employers must provide retraining for all authorized and affected employees whenever there is a change in the following: job assignments, machinery or processes that present a new hazard, or energy control procedures. Retraining also is necessary whenever a periodic inspection reveals, or an employer has reason to believe that there are deviations from, or inadequacies in employees' knowledge or use of the energy control procedures. When lockout-tagout is performed, it is important to identify all energy sources inside a machine or equipment. This is not limited to electrical energy, the most common source. It also must include mechanical energy, pneumatic energy, hydraulic energy, stored energy, chemical and thermal energy. There are two types of energy. Kinetic energy is the force caused by the motion of an object. A spinning wheel is an example of kinetic energy. Potential energy is the force stored in an object that is not moving. A spring under tension is an example of potential energy. Whenever any part of the body is exposed to these types of energies while servicing or maintaining equipment, lockout-tagout procedures must be followed. An energy isolating device is a device that physically prevents transmission or release of energy. The primary way to prevent the release of hazardous energy during service and maintenance activities is by using energy isolating devices such as manually operated circuit breakers, disconnect switches, line valves, and safety blocks. Lockout requires the use of a lock or lockout device to hold the energy isolating device in a safe position, to prevent machinery from becoming re-energized. If it is possible to lock out an energy isolating device, employers must lock out devices unless they develop, document, and use a tagout procedure that provides employees with a level of protection equal to that provided by a lockout device. Sometimes, it is not possible to lock out the energy isolating device associated with the machinery. In that case, you must securely fasten a tagout device as close as safely possible to the energy isolating device, in a position where it will be immediately obvious to anyone attempting to operate the device. The tag alerts employees to the hazard of re-energization and states that employees may not operate the machinery to which it is attached until the tag is removed in accordance with an established procedure. Tags are essentially warning devices and do not provide the physical strength of a lock, and may evoke a false sense of security. Lockout and tagout devices must be the only devices used for controlling energy, and must not be used for other purposes. In addition, they must have the following characteristics: durable enough to withstand workplace conditions, standardized according to color, shape, or size. Tags must be legible and offer employees a clear instruction such as do not start, do not open, or do not operate, substantial enough to minimize the likelihood of premature or accidental removal. Lockout devices must have structural integrity to require excessive force or specialized tools to remove them. Tagout attachments must be non-reusable, self-locking, and non-releasable, with a minimum unlocking strength of 50 pounds. Tags must be attachable by hand, and the device attaching the tag should be a one-piece nylon cable tie or its equivalent, so it can withstand all environments and conditions. labeled to identify the specific employees authorized to apply and remove them. The person who applied the lock is the only person allowed to remove the lock. Before beginning service or maintenance, the following steps must be accomplished in sequence and according to the specific provisions of the employer's energy control procedure. Prepare for shutdown. Shut down the machine. Disconnect or isolate the machine from the energy sources. Apply the lockout or tagout devices to the energy isolating devices. Release, restrain, or otherwise render safe all potential hazardous stored or residual energy. If a possibility exists for reaccumulation of hazardous energy, regularly verify during the service and maintenance that such energy has not reaccumulated to hazardous levels, and verify the isolation and de-energization of the machine. When the servicing or maintenance is completed, and the machine or equipment is ready to return to normal operating condition, the following steps must be taken. Check equipment. Make sure machinery or equipment is properly reassembled. Inspect machinery or equipment to ensure removal of non-essential items. Check employees. Make sure all employees are safely outside danger zones. Notify affected employees about the removal of the lockout/tagout devices and that energy is going to be reapplied. Verify that the controls are in neutral. Remove lockout/tagout devices. Only the authorized employee who applied the lockout/tagout device may remove the device. Notify employees. The authorized employee will notify all affected employees that the servicing or maintenance is completed and that the machine or equipment is ready to use. Re-energize. Whenever authorized employees remove lockout/tagout devices to test or position machines and equipment, the following sequence of actions must be followed. Clear the machine or equipment of tools and materials. Remove employees from danger zones. Remove lockout/tagout devices. Energize and proceed with testing or positioning, and de-energize all systems and reapply energy control measures. If an outside contractor services or maintains machinery, the on-site employer and the contractor must inform each other of their respective lockout or tagout procedures. The on-site employer also must ensure that employees understand and comply with all requirements of the contractor's energy control programs. When servicing and/or maintenance is performed by more than one person, each authorized employee must place his or her lock or tag on the energy isolating source. In cases where an energy control device cannot accept multiple locks, a hasp or lockbox may be used. If the equipment cannot be locked out, then each employee must place his or her tag on the equipment. Employers must make sure that there is a continuity of lockout or tagout protection. This includes the orderly transfer of lockout or tagout device protection between outgoing and incoming shifts to control hazardous energy. When lockout or tagout devices remain on energy isolation devices from a previous shift, the incoming shift members must verify for themselves that the machinery is effectively isolated or de-energized. Locks or tags must only be removed by the authorized employee who affixed the lock or tag. If it becomes necessary to remove a lock or tag that has inadvertently been left by an employee, the following steps must be taken. Notify the person's supervisor. Ensure that the person is not on the premises. Attempt to contact him or her at home. Management authorizes the removal of locks or tags according to the emergency removal procedure to control hazardous energy. Document the removal activity. Notify the authorized employee prior to his or her returning to work. Employers are required to review their procedures at least once a year to ensure that they provide adequate worker protection. As a part of that review, employers must correct any deviations and inadequacies identified in the energy control procedure or its application. The periodic review inspection is intended to assure that employees are familiar with the responsibilities under the procedure and continue to implement the energy control procedures properly. The inspector, who must be an authorized person not involved in using the particular control procedure being inspected, must be able to determine the following. employees are following steps in the energy control procedure. Employees involved know their responsibilities under the procedure, and the procedure is adequate to provide the necessary protection and what changes, if any, are needed. In addition, the employer must certify that the designated inspector performed periodic inspections. The certification must specify the following: machine or equipment on which the energy control procedure was used, date of the inspection, names of employees included in the inspection, and name of the person who performed the inspection. Here are the top key points you need to know about Lockout Tagout. Program and policy. Procedures must be developed, documented, and utilized for the control of potentially hazardous energy. Training. Training must be provided by the employers to ensure that the energy control program is understood, and that the knowledge and skills required for the safe application, usage, and removal of energy controls are acquired by employees. Equipment. Use only approved Lockout Tagout devices. Use correct tags that meet the OSHA standards. Lockout Tagout devices must be removed by the employee who applied the device. Procedure steps. Check detailed procedures for equipment, notify affected employees, shut down equipment properly, disconnect all primary energy sources, and verify the lockout. Restoration of energy. Make sure equipment is properly reassembled, notify affected employees, verify controls are in neutral, and remove Lockout Tagout devices. Periodic inspection. The employer must conduct a periodic inspection of the energy control procedure at least annually to ensure that the procedure and the requirements of the standard are being followed. The progress towards improving safety has come a long way on our journey to Goal Zero, but we won't get there if we don't change the way we think. Just because an accident hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. Increase safety awareness and properly identifying hazards to reduce the risk in the Lockout Tagout process will help your team work together more safely and productively.